Welcome to Built for This. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. My podcast features captivating conversations with intriguing people who have found purpose in their lives through their career, family, or life experiences, and just why they were built for this. Through the stories that you will hear, I trust that you will be inspired and encouraged to find just what you were built for. So let's get started. And welcome in for this week's edition of Built for This. I'm very happy to have the Vice President and Director of Athletics from the University of North Texas, Jared Mosley. Jared, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Happy to be here, Brian.
You know, I love to talk about college athletics. We have a little bit of a connection in that in my past, I worked for the NCAA Division II Lone Star Conference. Abilene Christian University was a member school. And you played at Abilene Christian basketball and then later on worked there. Talk a little bit about, first of all, before we get in your life as an AD at North Texas, what was it like being at ACU playing there? Now you're a member of Hall of Fame, by the way, at the school, and then working there in the administrative side.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic experience. And when you look at really my career path, I can't underestimate just a lot of different things that ultimately led me to ACU because it wasn't on my map originally. Mm-hmm. I rewind back to when I was a junior in high school and getting recruited. My dad, who was not a college graduate, only spent one semester at Abilene Christian, but growing up, he always talked about how great a school it was and, hey, you all need to come check it out. And our summer vacations, because he was a farmer, we would always take a little extended time, come to Arlington, go to 3 or 4 Rangers games, and that was the routine for us growing up. And so one year, my junior year, he said, hey, while we're on the way to Dallas, Arlington, I want to pop into ACU, want y'all to see it. Well, he had other motives as well because when we got to the parking lot, he said, hey, let's go see if the coaches are in here. Mm-hmm. And so I had the opportunity to walk in. The coaches were there, and from that point on, they began my recruitment, and I committed early to ACU. And just to be able to think about, the relational component of being in college athletics, that's one of the things that drives me every day because I look back and just know the relationships I developed there, the people who poured into me as a young man, and the direction that it gave me moving forward. And at one point, I thought my goal was going to be to coach for a long time. And like most in that era, most coaches, you get gray and old, and then you move into administration.
There you go.
And so when I got done playing professionally overseas, I moved back to Abilene Christian and had an opportunity to start as a graduate assistant in men's basketball. Did that for a couple of years, and one of the my second year as a GA, a man that I worked for as a student assistant, I handled all of like the UIL events and outside mm-hmm. events that would use ACU facilities when I was a student. He was the assistant AD, and he actually took another job, and so then that job opened up, and I thought, well, I had zero intentions or expectations of getting the job of assistant AD at Abilene Christian, but I knew Stan Lambert, who you're familiar with, knew Stan well, and I knew, hey, this will be great interview prep, and at least I'll get a chance to run through and get some reps on that side of things. And so had an opportunity to interview for the job, and ultimately got offered the job. And then decided that, hey, it made sense for us at the time we were at, and that launched my journey as an athletic director.
And I'll have to mention, you mentioned Stan Lambert. I was an assistant commissioner at the Lone Star Conference, the conference that ACU is in. At the time you were playing and starring at Abilene Christian. He's a great leader. Obviously, you learned under a great man. But going to college, you mentioned your father did not go to college. How important was that for you to all along say, I am going to go to college, whether it's through an athletic scholarship or some way to just to better yourself and lay a foundation for what would be to come?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Lockney, Texas, which is at the time about 2,300 people, and my dad was a farmer. My mom started off initially as just raising us kids. She later went back and graduated from Texas Tech and became an art teacher. And so, growing up, really my whole view of life and exposure to, what possibilities were career-wise. It was you either farm or you were going to be a teacher or coach. And so that was kind of the path that I had. But I can remember mom and dad both really hammering home education to all of us. I also just look back on my dad and just some of the things I knew. One of the things I enjoyed being in the outdoors. I loved the activity of farming. I did not like watching him have to endure Mother Nature and just the things you can't control in that. So I knew pretty early that I wanted to go to college. And again, because of my love for basketball at the time and just sports in general, I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. So ended up getting my undergraduate degree in education and then went back and got my master's degree in education administration.
A couple of years ago, I guess you're in your third year at the University of North Texas, my alma mater, flying the mean green,
Go Mean Green
colors here today for this. You get the opportunity to come aboard as director of athletics at UNT. What was going through your mind, or what did you think about when North Texas approached you about making this move, and how much thought did you have to give to it before jumping in?
Well, I've absolutely loved my time here at University of North Texas, and my family and myself having been here 9 years total now, but rewind after 6 years and working under Ren Baker, who's a phenomenal leader and really opened the door to give me a chance to come here to North Texas and learn under him and to be a part of what we did those first 6 years. I was just humbled to be able to be in a position to be named the athletic director when he left. And it really is something. Over the course of time, I had a tremendous opportunity. Not too many people get to go and lead at their alma mater, that's a unique endeavor and one that I'll forever hold dear. But I do feel like the exposure and the things that are present at North Texas and what you need today in a modern athletic environment to be successful, North Texas holds all of those cards in their hand. And I just think it's a phenomenal institution. You look at 47,000 students, you look at the growth of the academic programs and just the nationally ranked and recognized programs from a degree standpoint that North Texas has. You look at the market, nobody can deny it's one of the most viable and exciting markets to be in. You look at the impact of recruiting. I mean, you just go down the list. There's just so many things at UNT that position us at a place, even in this new landscape with its challenges, that we can continue to push the envelope and sky's the limit.
I do want to emphasize you were on the staff at North Texas for a number of years, and the Mean Green promote from within, and third year now, getting into the third year as the athletics director. So you're overseeing something over 300 student athletes and a number of sports and facilities that are just looking incredible. I've got a number of large range questions, but what's the biggest, I guess the most focused or biggest challenge as an athletics director in today's landscape? And I know there's many, but in the old days, I know ADs worked on putting schedules together with the coaches, but that's far beyond what's on the scope now. What's on your plate mostly that you have to deal with day to day?
I think right now, revenue generation drives a lot of what we do. The core of what we do day to day is pretty much stayed intact. You want to position teams for success and championships. You want to be able to provide programming and support for student athletes so they can ultimately grow and reach their full potential and the things that they want to do in their careers after sports is over. But like when you look at the day-to-day, like it's a lot of emphasis on that revenue generation piece. And I tell people all the time, like used to the buckets, there's so much that we have to pay attention to. You can't just say, well, because now we're in a revenue share element of college athletics that we can't really focus on facilities anymore, or we really don't need to focus on, staff and development. Like it all comes together. Every unique piece is part of a bigger puzzle that is college athletics. And so So as we look through how we tackle those challenges, some of them, we have to be a little more intentional maybe because we know we're pumping those resources into a number of different areas, but you can't just say we're going to stop doing this. And so I think the creativity of being able to try to lean into new ideas, new opportunities to drive revenues, new opportunities to be more efficient in what we do. I think all of it comes together. And so, one of the things that you got to lean heavy on are people. I still think at the end of the day, and that's another great asset that the University of North Texas has from board leadership, the chancellor, the board, the president, the alignment here is phenomenal. And when you've got people who are charging down the same highway at the same speed with the same desire on the other end, you generally can get creative and figure out the solutions you need to keep things going. And we've certainly been blessed in that over the last 9 years since I've been at North Texas, and they really do put us in a position of strength and opportunities to capitalize on success.
A couple of things, large things that have certainly changed the landscape in intercollegiate athletics: name, image, and likeness, the NIL, the transfer portal, and a couple of other things. But certainly those, conference realignment, I like to talk about all of those. But, whether you like or agree with NIL or not, and there's certainly both sides of fandom that will be happy to express that. People such as yourself and universities across the country have to deal with it. It's here. How has that changed dramatically what coaches do, what athletics directors do, what universities do when you're recruiting and trying to get student athletes to attend the university?
Yeah, it's been one that has evolved quickly just in the last 3 years. I mean, we went from it wasn't a thing to the creation of collectives who were completely outside of institutional control, who were raising support and then providing those name, image, and likeness opportunities. To now, with the House case settling back this past June, we now have some guardrails in place that put a cap of $20.5 million this first year for all institutions across Division I. And really, I think the thing that was needed most, it takes out these third-party collectives and their ability to just go raise money to pay, because that's not NIL, the degree and the level at which we were providing support to student athletes in that model. So I do feel like one of the hopeful things that we're all clinging to is that this thing will settle in and it'll be truly a more level playing field. But then for student athletes who do have the opportunities, who do have the social media followings and the on-field presence and accolades, like they can go do some third-party stuff, but it's going to be regulated by a new system called NIL Go, which will determine a fair market value. And I just think that's a much more sustainable future for all of Division I, but certainly for those of us at the Group of Five who, we don't have the largest TV contracts. We don't have the largest donor bases yet. And it at least gives us an opportunity to somewhat offer student athletes and get them back to the place of trying to find the right fit and not just chasing who's put the best offer on the table.
What about the pros and cons of the transfer portal? That certainly has changed recruiting for coaches. I mean, they have to always be, cognizant of that they may only have a player 1 year. But your thoughts about the pros and cons of how that's affecting college athletics?
I think it's easy to say, particularly at our level, when you're getting rated and your best talent is just coming in and out. But we've also reaped the benefits of the transfer portal. I mean, we've been able to find student athletes at higher levels who weren't getting opportunities to play as much as they want to be able to come and shine and have great careers here. We've been able to find student athletes at levels Division II, FCS that we're looking to play up and get that opportunity, that have come in and done well. So, I think we just have to be mindful. While again, we may not all agree or like it. It's not just been a negative for North Texas. It's been a positive as well. I think the biggest impact of the portal, and I feel for and have a ton of respect for our coaches today, because I think over the last 3 years with the portal, with name, image, and likeness, probably the biggest challenge is, you rewind back to even your time working in college athletics. Like you could get kids here for 2 years was kind of the short, but it was often 3, 4, or 5 years. And so you think about the ability to build culture, to establish your expectations in a program. You do that, but you would lean heavy on, second, third, fourth year student athletes who then help police that and hold that accountability in the locker room. And they're a partner with you in that. And when you have as much as, anywhere between 50 to 70, 80% turnover on a roster, coaches have to be intentional every year, every day in how they're building that culture, because you just don't have the continuity like you used to lean on and have that kind of be the model. So I think that's been one of the bigger challenges for coaches, but one that I'll tell you at North Texas, I'm super proud of all of our coaches who have done. I think they've done a great job of not losing sight of, we want to win championships. We need to get talent, but at the same time, we've got to create a culture that student athletes thrive in, and they've excelled in that.
I'd like to ask you about that. Has that become just another sort of job description for an athletics director to make sure that he or she is building that sort of culture within the coaching ranks so that they will be retained and the retention of coaches to stay there to pass on that same kind of culture?
Yeah, retention of coaches and staff. I mean, we lean heavily on staff who probably don't have quite the experience, but where they're thrown into leadership positions that may be a little bit ahead of where they might be ready to excel. And so, we, with the help of Jessie Gardner, who's on our staff, she's our senior woman administrator and oversees our leadership and culture development. She created and has done a great job of building out a very systematic way for us to connect with our staff. We do a monthly called Take Flight Leadership Series where we bring people in or we cover a topic with it's open to coaches, any administrator on staff to kind of lift the hood and show them some of the different moving parts that are a part of our athletic program. Part of that's development. We also we do newcomers breakfast so that we can welcome people twice a year who are new, because we do have a lot of turnover in certain areas. We do AD lunch bunch, who some of our staff who are doing a good job and they're getting noticed by kind of our executive team. They get invited to a small lunch with me and just a chance to get to know them and tell them how much we appreciate what they're doing to add to the overall success of UNT athletics. And so we try to sprinkle in a lot of programming and a lot of intentionality, because to your point, it's, at the end of the day, we're going to lose people. Mm-hmm. I want to lose people, though, who are really good and getting next opportunities. It beats having to lose them the other way and ask them to leave.
Yeah.
And we've been certainly blessed, because I think North Texas is viewed now as a tremendous opportunity, and there's a lot of anytime we have jobs open, like the volume of people and the interest we're getting from all over the country continues to grow, and I think that speaks to just how great UNT is and where people now see UNT on the national landscape.
And how much has the conference realignment assisted that? North Texas moving to the American Athletic Conference a couple of years ago, doing well in all the sports, and whatever the landscape might look like going forward, the conferences continue to move. But the conference affiliation has to be a positive thing and an attractive thing, I think, for coaches and student athletes as well.
No, I think it's phenomenal, and I think the biggest thing, and you would know this as well as anybody. When you go from where we were at in Conference USA, which was a good conference, mm-hmm. but you look at the media package, and it was all over the place as far as how fans could follow you. What was your exposure to larger audiences on a national level? When you go from there into the American Athletic Conference, who has arguably the best ESPN deal of anybody outside the Power Four, like we've seen that already. The number of linear contests that we've had on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, countless games. Any game that we broadcast in any sport is on ESPN Plus at a minimum, so people can easily find us and get there and watch it You just look at the viewership and the media value that we've been able to get out of that, and it's been significant. And so, realignment is never going to stop. Everybody asks me, do you think it's going to slow down? As long as TV deals are – that market continues to grow and there's interest, which in college athletics, you could argue it's as big a market as any outside of maybe the NFL. It certainly provides an opportunity that we want to try to grow and take care of North Texas. We want to position ourselves to be at the top of the conference competitively. We want to try to get ourselves there resource-wise. We want to get ourselves – the biggest hurdle we have right now, to be honest, is engagement. We've got to get people to dial in to broadcast when they're online. If we need them to buy a ticket, even if they can't make a game, we need them to participate in the Mean Green Scholarship Fund or our Green Lights funds around NIL. Like all of that stuff, when you look at ultimately what TV values most, they're not going to overpay just because you're good on the field. They're going to need the viewership and the ROI on that side of the coin to play out. And so, we've been fortunate these first 2 years in the American to have the second highest winning percentage across team sports in the entire conference. So we're trying to do our part on that competitive side. Now we're really focusing our efforts on how do we just get more people in the boat doing the things that they're passionate. I get fans all the time say, well, what's most important? Whatever's most important to you is most important. I want people to feel good about how they're investing in North Texas. And at the end of the day, I think, while I did not attend UNT, my hope and desire is for everybody who has a degree from North Texas to have a sense of pride and wanting to see their institution do well, because it brings value to everybody who holds that degree. And, athletics being probably the most visible carrier of the brand and we want to do our part to make that something people are proud of. So we want to continue to be consistent in how we compete at the highest level. But two, how can we just connect people back who maybe have been disengaged for, 5, 10, 20 years? How can we pull them back in and get them excited about the opportunity to have impact through sports at North Texas?
Well, my degree at North Texas goes all the way back to the 70s. Worked there in the 90s on the athletic staff, so it's an exciting time for me to see all that. It's something you mentioned I want to touch on about how athletics is, in many ways and many times, can be the face of the university or has the most immediate engaging to the public. How do you take that? I mean, you obviously take it seriously, that position, that what athletics on a campus, on a university level, can mean to a city or a community, and how important it is that you take that and guard it and then nurture it.
No, I think it's a tremendous responsibility, and it's one we talk about often throughout our staff. Like we have that torch we have to carry, and to your point, there is a standard. Like we don't ever want to, whether it's through maybe immaturity from a student athlete and a bad decision to even our coaches and the number of cameras and the opportunities there. Like we want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward on behalf of the university. And I also think too, like we want to capitalize on. We're in a busy market, and I think the challenging part, and this has been, this is one that we're continuing to lean into and learn. Like now we have so much we can do around metrics, analytics, and used to you would brainstorm ideas, you'd go chase them down, and you really didn't have the best ways to always measure and say, hey, here's how we're going to spend this marketing dollar, or here's how we're going to spend this advertisement to push this game and this ticket or this package. And, we're leaning in heavy right now just because it's the world we live in. Like we're making a lot of very targeted, directed communications. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that's it's a little bit of a transition for fans, because I hear it from some of ours. They're like, well, I don't see all the stuff on social media, or I don't see all the stuff on what you guys are putting out. And the reason is we're getting to people in the way that they consume it. And so it's not a one size fits all. So we're not out here just blasting something, hoping it sticks. We're spending a lot of time where we know if we spend $1 on this platform to really target market certain demographics based on the game, the year, the promotion, like we know we get a 4, 5, 6, 7x return for those dollars spent. And so, I think gone are the days of just the old mass. We're going to put it up on social media and hope it's going to grab hold of people, but we're going to really target the platforms and the different mediums people are taking things in. And so, in a busy market, you've got to be smarter in how you're utilizing those resources. And so far, we're seeing a lot of great returns over the last 18 months digging into a couple of these platforms.
On the idea of leadership, which is obviously a position that you're in there in the athletics department, when you were playing at ACU, late 90s, and then got into athletic administration there on the ACU staff before coming to North Texas, was there anything? I mean, you were obviously a leader on the team, basketball team playing. Anything that you discovered about yourself early on that you felt like that you would be or are a leader of women and men and would be in that position and to be able to deliver the assets and attributes that you have?
I think a lot of that goes back to I give a ton of credit just to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were raised in a faith-based home, so that was really important to our family, and it was important to me and something that continued to get nurtured while I was at Abilene Christian University. I can remember my dad always, like just some of the things in leadership that you look back and they've kind of been ingrained in who you are now and what you do. Like I can remember him talking to me a lot about when I would play basketball. Like his biggest thing was show no emotion. He's like, you've got to figure out how to play here and you can't ride the waves of what's going on the court. And in some ways, I think to a fault, that's probably for me been something that's my identity. I think a lot of people look at me, I'm a little more reserved leader. I'm not a super charismatic leader, but the inside fire for competition, I want to win, and we're going to figure out a way to get to the finish line. And so I think, that's one of the things looking back that I know my dad instilled in me. I look at just the number of coaches. I think about the impact of people and mentors, and I can reflect back all the way back to my childhood and people who had a part in my development, all the way to now in my adult life. Like there are 3 or 4 key relationships that had I not had people pour into me and had those connections, I wouldn't be here at North Texas today. And one of those just interesting example is Ren Baker. Rewind back to my time at Abilene Christian, I got the athletic director job formally at 27 years old and had worked under Stan, had worked under my former basketball coach, and then we had a year as an interim in my first 3 years. So I didn't get like a consistent one person I was working under. And I had our basketball coach at the time, Jason Copeland at ACU. He said, I've got a buddy of mine I want to introduce you to. His name's Ren Baker. He's starting an athletic program at Rogers State in Claremore, Oklahoma. He said, he's 26. You guys are going through the same thing. I think it'd be good if y'all met each other. And so he introduced us, and I, a few weeks after that introduction, went up and spent several days with Ren up in Claremore just to get to know him and sparked a lifelong friendship. And again, one that had it not been for getting introduced and taking time to meet Ren, I wouldn't be here today. And so I think about, the most significant thing, and I share this with student athletes, I share with my own kids at home. I think, we all think there's somebody out there we got to get to know to get where we want to go. And the reality is God's given us everybody in our personal circles to get where we want to go. It's just, have you developed and taken time to make the connection, the relationships, and then leaned into those, and not to use them in a way where you're trying to see what you can get out of the relationship, but right. Mutual relationships and friendships, you want to see those people do well. And I think, that's one of the things from a relational standpoint. It's a big part of my leadership is trying to create spaces where people, understand what their gifts and talents are and how they can maximize those to a bigger cause and a bigger purpose. I think if you don't find that connection to purpose, particularly in college athletics right now, you're going to get burned out really fast and not going to enjoy the ride. And so we talk a lot about how can we do that and put people in positions for success. And I think when you take care of people first and foremost, as long as you've got good good processes and things in place to continue to drive success and accountability, it all starts with the relationship. So that's probably the biggest component for me, and I certainly pulled a lot of that from coaches and mentors and my parents over time.
Well, you hit the word right on the head I was about to ask you about was relationships. And, you're a very personable kind of guy. As a director of athletics, I mean, is it about, it's got to be about managing people and those relations, mostly coaches or student athletes, and your door, I would think, is fairly constantly being visited by coaches that need some help or some guidance, and student athletes as well. So is the athletics director job, in addition to all these other things we just talked about on your plate, is kind of a person managing job?
I think it's probably not too different from any type of organization or business. I think there's a certain element of vision casting that as a CEO you're responsible for and really, setting direction. And you certainly have to be able to articulate that and have it resonate. But I really see my job in a couple of different buckets. I think you touched on one. It's to resource programs for success. So where are the things as an AD that I need to spend my time and energy on, the relationships particularly I need to spend my time and energy on that are going to deliver the biggest, not bang for the buck, but the quickest means to an end to get people's support. And so that's a heavy component. But the flip side is, I have to be the one to set what the culture is. I have to be the one that sets the temperature and the expectations on how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to work together, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And so when it comes to hiring head coaches, that's I don't take that lightly. Like that's a big part of it. And then ultimately, our executive team and senior staff play a pretty heavy role in selecting those individuals to be a part of the team. And so I do think the relational component, they're some of the day-to-day duties of the job, but at its core, you're just trying to get people to feel excited about, where we're going, what we have ahead, and to be able to do that together in a way that people truly enjoy coming to work. And we've got a phenomenal senior staff that does a great job of that. Like I said, some of them are young and still have a lot of opportunity ahead of them, whether it's at North Texas or somewhere else. But, we've been blessed with a great team to be able to continue to push what we want to achieve here.
What have you seen from your times as a student athlete 30 years ago or 25 years ago? When a student athlete steps on campus, everyone has to realize that they're also a student, have a lot of things going on in their life. They just happen to be playing athletics. Do you think about that a lot? And then I know coaches mostly focused on what they're going to do on the field or the court, but what's the changes, or what do you see student athletes in this day and age facing, and the challenges that they have to face when they maybe go off a long way from home and now they're juggling classes and social life, girlfriends, boyfriends, but playing athletics at the same time?
I think the core of that's still pretty similar in a lot of ways. I'll say probably the biggest difference, thinking back to my own playing time and to today, I think just the pressures of social media, the constant critiquing that either student athletes or programs get just through fan bases and the general public, like that, our student athletes are doing that in their own personal front. But when you throw in then, how they're playing on a court and getting that feedback, like I think it can be overwhelming at times for these young men and women. But when you look at all the other aspects of development, like we still want student athletes to get a degree. We still want to focus on life skills. And so, some of those things have shifted significantly. Even in the last 3 years, we're doing a lot more around financial literacy.
Yeah.
Now that student athletes are being able to have NIL and revenue share opportunities, you want to teach them early because I don't think a lot of us got detailed educations in finance as
Nope.
young people. And, as soon as it was coming in, you were just excited to go spend it, and you don't take into account planning for the long haul. And so we take a lot of time doing that. We do lean in heavily into career prep and development. I still feel like at North Texas, it's one of the greatest opportunities we have, not just in athletics, but certainly as an institution, being in one of the most dynamic marketplaces, like trying to expose student athletes and help them understand what they enjoy, what they love, and then what their skill set is, and then how can we make a connection for them or point them in a direction or pull people in who can make that pathway from when the day comes from transitioning from sport to a career, make that something that they're ready for, but then that they're not going to have to go change 4 or 5 careers to figure out what they want to do. How can we maybe fast track that in the year 2 or 3 that we have while they're at North Texas?
Very well, coaches like to develop that family type atmosphere on their teams and the closeness and the close knit groups that they have. How do you see intercollegiate athletics playing a part as far as what a student athlete might become as far as their persona, who they are? Not everybody participates in athletics when they go to college, but there's so much talk usually from coaches, but from others about the benefits of being on a team and benefits of playing athletics, of being held accountable and responsible. And those are some of the things, a couple of the words that seem to always pop out. What do you see as the benefits and assets of the applicable assets of intercollegiate athletics?
I mean, I think it's there's not another vehicle like it. I mean, I think it's the ultimate preparation tool for really life in general. I mean, take career and job out of it. Just being a husband, being a friend, being a colleague. It's critical. And I'll be honest. I think one of the things student athletes that I think the last couple of generations of students in general, like they're more disconnected. The soft skills, the people skills, like they're so used to being and communicating on a device, and you still have to have a personal communication mechanism in sports. Like there's no replacement. Like you can't text coach, you can't go like there's a face-to-face. I got to have a dialogue conversation, and I think that's a skill, to be honest, that is probably emphasized more. It's always been there in sports, and I think differentiated student athletes from maybe some of their peers. But I do feel like today in the arena we're in, it's a huge differentiator as far as just, you can't replace. There are a lot of things that technology can replace, but the people who always have the ability to communicate and connect with other people, you'll always have a place in this world. And I try to preach that any opportunity I get with our student athletes, certainly with my own kids. But I do think those, teamwork, overcoming hard things, discipline's a huge part of it. I mean, your days have to be extremely structured as a student athlete. You got 20 hours of workout. You got, another 15 to 20 hours worth of coursework, and then, you're trying to squeeze in other things that you want to do and you love. And, so I just think when you combine all those things, the discipline, the having to work together, overcoming differences, diversity in a locker room, like there's just so many things you can point to that I think certainly gives student athletes a tremendous opportunity when they get ready to hang up the sport.
You haven't had to make a lot of big moves, geographically, yet, and we're hoping that you're at North Texas a long time. But as a husband, a father, and this is an industry that there's usually, or most of the time, a lot of moving around the country. How difficult is that to juggle family life when an opportunity comes up and says, "Hey, we got a chance to move, here and do this," and you're uprooting kids out of school and the normalcy of just living a life. I mean, it happens in every industry, but certainly in college athletics a lot.
No, it's a volatile industry to say the least, and I've been fortunate because I'm one of the few. I have not left the state, and I've only been at 2 institutions and 1 nonprofit. So, like, I haven't, and a lot of that's been intentional. And I think for me, I revert back to, again, some of these relationships and connections. Bob Bodine, who's executive search firm guru, I mean, one of the best in the industry and across the country. I had breakfast with him as an early administrator at Abilene Christian, and he said, listen, you need to sit down and really prioritize career-wise. What do you want to do? Like, what's important to you? Think about family, think about geography, think about size of institution. Like, he gave me this list to go back and evaluate, and I figured out pretty quick for me at the time with young kids that I wanted to geography was important. I had no interest in moving my family to either coast. I don't do well in cold weather, so I knew at that time. I joke with people. I think my northern border was probably the Red River.
Beautiful.
Not too far from that, but early he said you want to define those things that you know are critical for you, because in the heat of a job interview and ultimately an offer, that's not the time to start weighing those. Like, think about those things ahead of time. And so we said no to a lot of opportunities outside of the region because that was important to me. I will say I think the hardest part of the job, certainly getting the AD job at 27 with 3 young kids there at Abilene. There's a lot of great things that came with that, but I think that was probably the hardest 10 years for me, was just trying to juggle the responsibilities of that job with young kids. Like, you ultimately, your family has to be in the boat with you. They have to be extremely gracious because you're not always there at everything. Have my wife, Trish, who's been phenomenal, just support and partner through it all in those times. But I can tell you now that kids are older, it may open up opportunities down the road to, like, let loose some of those when you're not having to worry about how it's going to impact others and it's just you and your wife. But we absolutely love Texas. I tell this to a lot of people. University of North Texas has as much upside as anybody in the country. So my intentions are to do what we can to keep making this better here and hopefully do that for the long haul. I'm not a job hopper. I don't chase. If I was, I could be some other places, but we love what we have here and love the family that we have at North Texas.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that. There's obviously a big difference between being an assistant athletics or director on a staff and then being the person in charge of the final decisions. You first got a taste of that at ACU, now here at North Texas. You obviously welcome that kind of leadership and that kind of final decisions. What's the biggest swing from being just on staff as an assistant AD, and then the athletics director has to answer to much higher, the university president and other constituents? But the biggest change you're seeing in your career with that?
That's a great question. It's one I probably have a little more clarity now, having gone from being a young AD to then working under Ren's leadership. And there was a lot of things coming into North Texas that Ren put on my plate, I think because of my previous experience he trusted me with. But there were decisions that I was making as an AD, but I slept fine at night. Like, because I wasn't the one actually carrying the weight of leadership, having to make that decision. And I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of the day-to-day functions aren't all that different in what you do as a senior level administrator and ultimately the athletic director. But ultimately, when you feel the weight of this is my call or this decision is one only I can make, and then whatever happens as a result of that, like, you carry that internally, and that's been tough. But I've been thankful for a lot of people. Had worked for 2 amazing presidents at Abilene Christian University under Royce Money and Phil Schubert. Dr. Smatras giving me this opportunity and having a chance to have worked with him before getting the job. Dr. Keller now and just his leadership. Like, I've been blessed to be able to work alongside some of the best, I think, at what they do. And you certainly lean into those because while an athletic director job is difficult, I wouldn't want to trade places with a college president. Like I think presidents have the hardest job in just the number of constituencies they have to work with. And but I've been blessed to work with people who were in their own unique ways. Each had a tremendous strengths that I've been able to pull from, and great wisdom I've been able to glean just being able to pick their brains and understand better how they've managed that kind of stress and certain situations. So it takes a team, and I've certainly had a lot of great people pour into me. You've accomplished a lot, and the team has accomplished a lot over the last couple of years, both with success on the playing field and the courts and new facilities. Do you have? I'm sure you do, because you're an athletics director. Of just a short-term vision or some kind of plateau? These things. I'd love to see University of North Texas athletics try to get to this level, or let's accomplish this over the next few years. You know, that question gets asked a lot, and I think it's the clearest way I can articulate that. I think, one, we need to consistently win. Like that was one of the things for a couple of decades we didn't do consistently. And again, we track everything. And so, for about a 25, 30-year period, we were roughly 43% win percentage across our team sports. And over the last 8 years, we've been between 55 and 61%. And so we want to do that consistently. We don't want to have years where we're great and then the roller coasters of up and down. How can we be consistently good in this conference? And then ultimately, I think the vision, I tell people, UNT can go wherever it wants to go. If we want to be a Power 4 institution at some point, we've got a lot of the things in the mix to do that. The one glaring thing that we've got to improve is engagement with alumni and donors. And my vision is how can we push our sense of pride in the product and sense of pride bigger in the brand and the institution to a place where people are willing to do their part, whether it's buy a season ticket or write a check, regardless of where the outcomes are at the time. We see ebbs and flows that depending on the wins or losses on the fields and courts, like revenues are up and down. The best programs in the country, the Boise States, the San Diego States, the programs that are on the cusp of South Florida, East Carolina, like school Memphis and our conference, those schools support regardless of what's on the field because they know that's a piece to getting and sustaining success. And so, I think when you look at where we're at today with roughly 2,500 donors, we eclipsed 2,000 donors for the first time ever a year ago. That needs to be 5 as soon as we can, and then we need to get it to 7 or 8 because that's where our peers are at. And so there's just those things I think for me is how can we continue to strategically attack ways to get people excited about their university and consider an investment in whatever they're passionate about in athletics because sky's the limit when we can mobilize our alumni base.
And I was going to say is it that limitless ceiling that mostly attracted you to the North Texas job?
There's no question. I mean, I think to be successful in college athletics, you look at, we're one of only 3 institutions in the country that has 40,000 students or more, a Carnegie Tier 1 research institution, and that plays FBS football. Us, Florida International, and South Florida. And I think when you look at that's pretty rare air, and that's a unique set of qualifications that people look at when it comes to realignment and positioning. And so I want to capitalize on that. I can't worry about the timing of when that happens, but every day we've got to keep chopping wood, and getting more people on that side of the equation. Because once we figure that out, the rest of it takes care of itself.
All right. Well, great job over the last few years. Great success ahead. I wish you all the best. Thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Go Mean Green.
Go Mean Green.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Built for This. Be sure to follow Built for This on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Join me on the next episode when I will share entertaining stories of inspiration, encouragement, and purpose-driven experiences. What are you built for? Built for This is produced and recorded by Heart Media DFW.